My name is Momar Taal. I'm the founder and managing director of Tropingo Foods. We're a food processing and export company based in Gambia.
Okay. Mr.
My name is Papa Yusupha Njie. I'm the CEO of Unique Solutions, a Gambian-grown company that has been doing business over the past 17 years, both in and out of Gambia. We're currently in Senegal, in Liberia, and of course, I also wear the hat of the chairman of Access Bank. Thank you.
Mr. Touray.
Hi, I am Draman Touray, and I am the CEO of Pristine Consulting and Volo. Pristine is a Gambia-based software company. Volo is a Francophone regional company, fintech company.
Now I'll call on Muhammed, my mentee. I mentored him to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Muhammed Sanyang. I am a farmer specialized on poultry and horticulture activity. I am a president of Youth Farmers Association and general manager of MBK Farm Limited. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad. Last but not least, always the greatest, the women, Jaha.
It's strange that I'm the only woman here in front of a lot of men, so that's just girl power. But my name is Jaha Dukureh, and I am the founder and executive director of Safe Hands for Girls, a survival-led nonprofit organization that has offices here in the Gambia, in Sierra Leone, as well as in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you very much. Our session is going to be very interesting because we're looking at extremely successful young people, and we would hear from them how they got here, what they went through. And it was interesting because yesterday I woke up and I heard Obama talking to Prince Harry. And I just loved what he said, and I will read it for you. And I think this is the greatest thing for youths to hear. Because Obama said, it is too easy for people to criticize millennials, these are the youths, for being superficial, selfish, and self-obsessed. But he said, well, it happened, he won because primarily there were a bunch of 20-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and 25-year-olds who started going out into the communities that oftentimes they'd never been in before and believe in the possibilities of a different kind of politics. And I think this is the kind of politics we want our youths to be involved in. We know that the majority of Gambians are actually young people under 35 because quickly the statistics say 42 are below the ages of 15 and 24, and 64, 35 and down. That's the population. And if you're not involved in the development, we won't move. And I totally agree with you. I've always said this, mentoring, mentoring, mentoring. Everybody you've seen who's successful has been mentored. And it's a difficult thing, I know, for Gambians because I tried mentoring some. He's very good, but some will say, I know that. Before you even finish your sentence and you're trying to mentor. But I'm sure that attitude will change. And we can hear their stories because they're extraordinary stories, especially for Muhammad, who started as a primary school student with 5 chickens, coming to sell eggs to me, and me helping him build up his. We will start with Mr. Yes, Mr. Taal.
My life story, okay. So yeah, I'm Momar Taal. I know some of you in here. And for everyone who I don't know, it's great to meet you, and I hope to get to know a lot of you more. My story is going to address the skeptics in the room, because I am living proof that as a Gambian, raised in Gambia, bred in Gambia, taught in Gambia, eating benachin every day, you can reach everything that you dream about faster than you ever imagined. So there's this quote that I used to live by, and it's people underestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but you underestimate what you can do in 10. And from when I started my business 4 years ago, I really overestimated what I would achieve in a year. But I had no idea what we would achieve in the next 3 years. So I'll just give you a quick timeline. In 2014, I believe, I registered my company. It was Tropingo Foods. The idea was, I came back to Gambia and I was looking around and all I saw was mangoes rotting, cows eating them, no value added. And I decided I'm going to start a company that's going to create some sort of value from these mangoes so that these farmers can create some sort of income for themselves. And also, I can make a profit. And I did a lot of research. I read the page 2 at the time, which is now the National Development Plan, and I found out there was a component, a government strategy on value addition. I said, okay, this is in line with what I believe in. And I set about writing a business plan towards this. And this became my company, Tropingo Foods. I didn't have a penny to my name. I'd never ran a structured business in my life. I used to sell T-shirts before, but a structured business, I've never been in a boardroom. And in the next 3 years, we built our company from myself to a staff of 200 employees part-time, 90% of them women, to being recognized by Forbes magazine, to being on CNN, BBC. So if I had adopted that, and I was skeptical, it's Gambia. Everybody was skeptical about what I was trying to do. How are you going to do it? You're 24 years old, you want to build a factory. Who are you? What are you going to do? And people thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. But I had this desire, and I felt like there was nothing worth living for if it wasn't this. I didn't feel that anything had enough meaning to me, and I feel that goes back to the skeptics. If you believe in something, if you believe in yourself, and you're committed to something, despite what skepticism is out there, you'll be able to block it out and achieve what you want to achieve. So going back to our company, today we export. We're the first dried mango company in the Gambia. We have a facility where we produce about three tons of dried mangoes a day in the dry mango season. And this allows us to work with smallholder farmers. We have about 30 smallholder farmers that supply to us, who in the last few years were in a desperate situation because their mangoes would just rot and they would have no value from them. And today they're building businesses, and as we speak right now, they're preparing for me to come buy their mangoes next year by preparing their farms. And what we plan to do is to scale this idea to get farmers to believe that there's more to farming than just sitting down and waiting for your crop to mature and sell it to whoever comes in buckets. Why don't we mechanize the groundnut sector? Why don't we create value chains in these other sectors that we're involved in, or you have the opportunity to get involved in, because that's the only way we're going to change the way farming and agriculture is seen, viewed, or perceived in Gambia. So like I say, let's say 10 years from now, what is the Gambian farmer going to look like? This is what I think about in my company. If you go out in the field today, we also export groundnuts, and every year I go to assess the harvest, and I meet the farmers. I've been meeting the same farmers for the last 4 or 5 years. And the average age of a farmer right now in Gambia is 70 years plus. Yeah. So when we say in 10 years, what's the farmer going to look like? Those people are going to be 80. We don't want them to retire? But they can't. They have no backup income. They've been farming the same way for the last 70 years, and it hasn't been able to lift them out of poverty. Now it gets worse. 70 years ago, or 30 years ago, a farmer would have 4 or 5 wives, 25 children, and they will all tend the farms. Today, you have less wives, less children. What are your children doing? They're getting educated. They're going into the cities. They're going back way. They're looking for new opportunities because they're tired of seeing the cycle of perpetual poverty that is associated with farming. So are we going to continue farming the same way for the next 70 years? Who's going to farm? The kids are not interested. Now, this is a tremendous opportunity for people like you and me. We live in an age where technology is our fingertips. Whatever you want to learn, you can learn on Google, right? We need to start thinking creatively of how we can disrupt this farming industry in Gambia, this agriculture sector in Gambia. And this is something I'm very passionate about. This is what drives me beyond my business. I know that in 10 years we're going to be faced with a crisis in the agriculture sector because we won't have the farmers to farm. Every year the quality and the yield and the value of our peanuts, which is our main crop, reduces. This is a fact. Today as we speak, the value of the peanuts that we export are so low, there is no international market as we speak. And this is a trend that will continue. And the opportunity now exists for people like you, people like me, to go in and say, listen, as these farmers phase out, let's design a system that's sustainable, is commercialized, and can make agriculture cool again. Make agriculture cool to the youths. Make the youths go back to the land. I know there was this back to the land thing but how do we do that? And that's why I'm here. That's what brought me to this success that everyone says that we've achieved in the last 4 years. It's because of that drive, that passion, that vision. You can hear it in my voice. This is what I live to do. I didn't do this to just make money. And when we have people doing that or have that much conviction in whatever sector you're in Gambia, I am convinced that we can be one of the greatest countries in Africa because we're so small. So just not to take more time, that's who I am, and yeah, I look forward to answering questions later.
Thank you very much. Very impressive. I told you it gets better. Mr. Njie, can we share your story?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Doctor, I want to take this opportunity to thank TAF. And yesterday was an inspiring day. We started our businesses under a dictatorship. We're now trying to transition under a democracy. So when I see some of what I saw yesterday, I saw Mr. Sonko talk in front of the president, a few home truths that the president understood. I saw our Uncle Mod Senghor bring out some of the issues he talked about. And of course, Mr. Karel also brought a few home truths together. I just felt that this was the homecoming that we've been looking for, especially in my generation for the last 17 years. I'm not going to sit here and consider myself a young man anymore. I have a story to share. My daughter yesterday wanted to go to a party. She's a student, and I saw Dr. Jagne also telling me, oh, are you going to take them? Are you going to pick them up? And I'm sharing the story in the sense that this journey is much more about the money you make or the failures or the successes, as Mr. Taal has said. I think it is a journey that gives you the best thing in life. I told my wife that I wouldn't talk about how I met her, but the offsprings that we've produced tell me that it is through this journey of entrepreneurship that on a day like yesterday, I was torn between letting my daughter go out till 2 in the morning, picking her up, and so many emotions. And as you talk about these days, these young people, if they do well in school, what can you do but let them out? But like I said, I always joke with her that I want to have an early retirement so that anybody who comes to the house and knocks, they think that I'm not there, but I'm actually there. And I'm like, who's your father? What position do you take in school? What do you want to be? And he's like, Daddy, no, don't say that. But I'm of the opinion that it is through these things that we've lived over the last 17 years that gives us these joys. I mean, I started 17 years ago. I came home from England. It wasn't fashionable to come back home at that time. Everybody was like, why do you want to come back? I remember the words, Nyanga, Lekasi, things of that sort those days. I mean, we came back because there was an incident that happened to me at the, I think the Tesco or Sainsbury's, I can't remember. I was like a few months away from graduating. And I had a security guard follow me in the supermarket. You know, of course, natural, just like Rene's story, when the lady from Barcelona handed her the fur coat. You know, I mean, the guy was following me, naturally thought that I'd be nicking stuff, as they say in England those days. Just like when you're at the ATM, somebody's thinking that you're gonna, you know, mug them or whatever. But at that moment, you know, I was a few weeks from graduating. I was a young black guy. And I'm like, okay, do I have to wear a T-shirt or some sort of attire to tell this guy that I'm gonna be a degree holder, engineering degree, electronics, whatever it was. So at that moment, it was a moment that said, look, I can't live my life like this. I'm gonna go back to what I know. So we came home when homecoming was fashionable, under a dictator. And I think in my presentation, I really wanna talk about some of these opportunities. Yes, I don't want to say that it was 17 years of no opportunities. If you hear our stories, if we could make it in difficult circumstances, I'm of the opinion that the young people we see here today have a great chance to do so much more. And I think at that moment I was like, look, let me go back. I packed my bags, analog mobile phone, $2,000, $3,000. Now it gave me the opportunity, my former MD, Bashi Balde. I came home, year 2000, you had the millennium bug. I had the opportunity to go on TV as a 21-year-old to tell Gambians that their electricity, which wasn't much at that time, was not going to be affected by the millennium bug. Of course, I wasn't sure, but you know, like I said, that gave me the sort of momentum. Country can believe me. Surely if I start knocking on your doors and selling a few computers and devices and stuff like that, I could get away with it. And that's how I started. I decided to leave my job. Everybody thought I was crazy. They came to my dad, Papa Njie dañ ko liggéey, you know. I remember those days, my former mates at NAWEC will come to my cubicle where I was teaching, and they would be like, okay, we can't understand. You left your pickup. By then I wasn't married. You know, where is your office? They couldn't understand. But I was that moment takes me back to Washington when out of Mo Ibrahim of this world and Muhammad Yunus and everybody, you know, Hillary Clinton talked about me. Hillary Clinton talked about the fact that I was training young people in my community to be the future generation and young leaders of tomorrow. I used to do internet cyber summer camps. By then I had a dial-up internet from Gamtel, you know, God knows, 256 maybe, Draman, I don't know. Some of them don't know dial-up. That's why I'm saying we're not very young, you know. So there was no 4G and broadband at that time. But that's how I built the business, you know, from 10 computers, you know, in a cyber cafe, you know, and met good people along the way. I mean, like I keep saying, the topic we were being asked to talk about is opportunities, and some of the things, the opportunities are the people who you meet. I've always said that, yes, the end game is the financial reward, but I'm of the opinion that it is the people you meet that give you what you want. And one of the people I met was my wife, because she had I said I wasn't going to say it, but the story goes this way. I had my utility car. You know, somebody introduced me to her. She had a virus in her computer those days. So you can imagine dial-up internet, you know, having to dial up, download the virus update. So during this time, her mom was treating me with like wonjo and, you know, cakes and all sorts. So there I was, I'm like, am I really working here, you know? But this entrepreneurship journey, if it's about this, I'm really going to be part of this, you know? So there I was, you know, enjoying myself. We went to school together, but, you know, everybody went abroad. Long story short, at the end of the evening, she asked me for a bill. I'm like, no. I'm going to give you my business card. I want you to tell people who went to Gambia High that I'm back home and this is what I'm doing. My shop is on Kairaba Avenue, things of that sort. And that's how the evening went. I went to a friend of mine. I think Uncle Modu mentioned him yesterday, Jane. And he's like, Jane was supposed to be the finance director of the company. It's like, wow. I thought you'd bring back a check. You know, what type of business are we running? I mean, you're giving away money we haven't earned. So Jane forced me, says, at least worst case you can do is call her, ask her out. At least. So, you know, there was no check, but I was brave enough to pick up the phone. And I'm proud to say that, you know, 15 years later, I have the most wonderful family on earth. You know. So, Doctor, I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much. And we will call on Mr. Touray to start and tell us how they got here. Because the strength, because you cannot move without having strength and without giving up. I think one of the biggest problems I see with our young people is they give up too easily. You cannot give up if you want to do well in life. You have to, if God gives you lemons, like the Americans say, create your lemonade. Something else will come afterwards. So we'll call on Mr. Touray to share his story.
Thank you, Doctor. I think my story really starts from the Upper River region, where my father came from, a Sarahude guy from Garawal. And I was actually born in Congo because, as you know, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, a lot of Gambians, including people like Basiru Jawara, Solo Dabo, my father, they left Gambia to go and look for their fortunes. And these are incredible people, very, very hardworking, very strong, and very determined. And they lived in a very, very, very difficult environment. My own father had his entire wealth confiscated 3 times by 3 different military governments in Congo, Brazzaville, where we lived. So that was the environment in which I was born. And in the Gambia, every summer we would go back to the village Garawal for our holidays. I would put in quotation, because 5 a.m. you wake up to go to the farm, to farm. And my uncle, my dad's older brother, who was a very successful businessman, believed that putting sugar in the porridge like Rui is a waste of money. So after working from 5 till 7, you had your breakfast. So I really grew up in that environment. Around our house were always people, businessmen coming from Angola, coming from Sierra Leone, people who were just really living by their hard work. And so I was very fortunate that on my mother's side, she comes from a big Fula family, Balde family. I also had uncles who were on the intellectual side, and some of them went to very good schools in the West, in Ivy League schools. So growing up, by the age of 9, I was selling in our shop. We had multiple shops, and I would go to help out with the selling after school. When I finished school, I'll go and sell. And at the same time, I also had the other uncles who were teaching me different things about life. So I got a chance to read a lot, and I learned about a lot of very strong, hardy people, such as Robert Falcon Scott, who tried to become the first person to reach the South Pole, and he died in the process, but he kept a diary, and his story was very fascinating to me. And I also read about the first time that Mount Everest was scaled. So I had examples of people who were trying to do very impossible things. So to make a long story short, I went to school in the US and in New York City. And when I finished school, I worked on Wall Street. and I developed an architecture for the Goldman Sachs performance evaluation system, which is still in use today, which is used by the firm. Thank you. Which the firm uses to evaluate their brokers and also to determine the amount of bonus that they should get. So whilst I was doing that, Goldman Sachs wanted to make an investment into a new commodities exchange based in Bermuda, and they approached me, and they introduced me to this guy called Thomas Heiss, who was the CEO of this commodities exchange. So I went to live in Bermuda and architected and developed this commodities exchange, online commodities exchange. And I became very good friends with Tom Heiss. And he and I sold that first company, and then we developed a second company called RiveNet.com. And so RiveNet.com is an insurance-based startup, and we sold that company. So I was in Chicago with Tom, and we were thinking, what should we do next? I was like, let's get a boat and we sail around the world, something I've always wanted to do. So Tom was like, that's a great idea. And 2 days later, he comes back, and I just wish I had the presentation, but I wanted to show you what he showed me, which is Tom is he reads a lot, and he's a very smart guy. He came back, he said, Draman, do you know that Gambia is going to undergo a huge population bulge in its youth? I was like, well, I know there is high fertility rate, but what you're saying also makes sense, So he shows me this chart, which shows that Gambia is beginning a cycle of having a lot of young people. So he says to me, instead of us going and sailing around the world and doing all these things, why don't we invest in Gambia? I said, okay, very hesitantly. So, but he's a very persuasive guy. He says, we could do a lot of things, but, the technology side, there is nothing there. We could do things that we could never do anywhere else in the world. So we came back, we came to Gambia, and we invested initially in a technology company. And whilst we're going through this process of investment, we realized that we didn't have the talent pool, the engineers, the software engineers that we needed to build the types of applications we needed to build. I decided that the future really would belong in biometrics, especially in Africa, because we need to identify people so that we can provide them services such as healthcare, credit facilities, and things like that. So we started at that point a partnership with the Francis de Gaulle Njie Foundation. Francis de Gaulle was a competitor of mine in high school, and when he was at MIT, I was at Columbia, and our schools used to have these hacker wars. So we would hack into their network, and they would hack into our network. And I had lost touch with de Gaulle. So one day we hacked into the MIT network, and we went into their files, and I saw that the person who owned this file was called Bur Salum. I said, Bur Salum, how is that possible in MIT? So I developed a back channel to the person, and he was the leader of their team. I was like, Bur Salum, I said, I am Bur Sin. And he's like, what? So we established that we are both Gambians. He on the MIT side, he was the leader. I on the Columbia side, I was the leader. I was like, wow, this is incredible. It's a testament to the great educational system. Yeah? It's a testament to the great educational system that we had. So we automatically knew that we have the people in Gambia that we can train to be software engineers that can build biometric identification systems. But we decided that we would need 5 years to do this. So with the Francis de Gaulle Njie Foundation, we worked with high schools and universities. We would give scholarships to outstanding students who were very brilliant, take them through the educational system, provide them internship, and then they would come and work at Pristine. So we used that, and in 2009, we started a biometric identification platform in the Gambia called the Gambis Platform. And at the beginning, everybody thought it would fail, everybody. And we invested our own money. The government invested zero. We invested our own money. Initially, it was very tough, but eventually, the business started really going very well. And so as the business starts to grow well, one day, after some intervention, some Lebanese guy comes to my office and says to me, I'm here on behalf of the business partner of the president. You all know who he is. And we want you to hand over the business to us. So, to make a long story short, and to be polite, I said, no, I cannot do that. So, unfortunately, this whole episode, disintegrated into, the kidnapping of my older brother, because I was 2 steps ahead of, the president, shall we say. So they demanded $400,000 in cash for the release of my brother. And a very wise old man, Basiru Jawara, told me, if you give them any money, they will ask for more. So you just have to fight. So I was very lucky. We used Facebook, SMS, technology. At that point, we had a good team of people. So we used technology to fight against the regime, but also we had support of the US government, the ambassador. So we were very fortunate. We had a very good network of people, some of whom are here. With Mr. Ngom, whose son was one of the developers that we had in our team. So after a good fight, we were eventually able to get the government to say, okay, let's have a truce and we have a settlement. But in the meantime, I was then in exile, of course. And I said, whilst we are fighting Jagne, I don't want to be distracted from my overall mission of biometrics. Let's start a new company. So we started a new company called Volo, headquartered in Senegal. And this came out of just one idea that I had that, the Francophone world, they don't have credit reports. So let's introduce credit reports. So we wrote to the BCAO, they invited us. It was very tough, we didn't speak French. But just to make a long story short, after they had told us they would never work with a small company such as us, within 1 year we had a license to provide credit bureau services in 8 countries in Francophone Africa. And our platform was all developed by these young Gambians, all of it. And, Thank you.
Thank you very much. The young people in Gambia are brilliant. I've never met such brilliant people in my life. And they're doing extremely well, not just in Gambia, but if you go to the US, it's the same story. Very young Gambians having patents, scientific patents. It's very impressive. I will now call on Muhammed, my mentee, who has been very good mentee, actually, because he listens a lot. And he will ask you 2,000 questions to get it right. But I think that's the kind of mentoring we are talking about. Muhammed?
Thank you, Auntie Siga. Thank you. I think today I am kind of proud to be here because of you. Imagine, even late hours, you call Auntie Siga, ask for a question. He's always available. And it's always doors are open for young people. Not only me, actually. Thank you. Again, my name is Mohammed Sanyang. I am a farmer specialized on poultry and horticulture. I started my business when I'm going to school, was 11 years old. I started with 5 chicken, about 2-meter square box. And then from there, I expand my farm to 50 at my backyard of our compound. And then from this backyard, I struggled for probably 3 years. And then I expanded to 600. Wow. And then from 600 is 6,000 2 years ago. And then, and now I'm one of the biggest layer poultry farm. Now I'm talking about 12,500. And currently we are working so hard building new structures. By February, we are expanding to somewhere around 20 to 30,000 to create more jobs for youths and then to create more healthy chicken and feed for people. Yeah, like I would like to talk with the youth more. My story is kind of unique. Like Auntie Siga said, I started with a bicycle. From school, I will collect my eggs and drive bicycle to small restaurant, individual compound like Auntie Siga's, and then start selling them. Then from there, expand to motorbike. Then from there, I expand to car, even my... yeah. Yeah. Now, thank God, I have my staff have the special delivering vehicle. It's not easy, but it's not also difficult. You just have to work hard, focus, and have self-confidence, and you have to work hard. If you have something to do today, please do it today. Don't leave it for tomorrow. You have to work hard. Yeah. And this year, I also been selected by U.S. State Department through U.S. Embassy in Banjul to go and attend International Leadership Visitors Program in U.S., which I learned a lot also from them. Yeah. Also, we kind of want to motivate our colleagues and youth, since we are the biggest number of population in our country, youth, more like they said 60-65%. It's an opportunity. You have human resources, you have the land, but you need commitment from both sides, from the youth, from the government, the policy makers. Policy always motivate entrepreneur and youth to take opportunity. When government may have a good policy, you always take an opportunity, invest into that business or expand your capacity. So I think this is very important. So it's not easy. Like I am a youth, I know what you feel. It's always a challenge. There was a challenge, a different challenge, but you have to believe yourself. Work hard, have discipline, be honest, focus, and then you have your action plan, and then one day God will help, inshallah. And,
I think Muhammad forgot to tell you he has passion for poultry. And I think whatever you do, if you have the passion, you succeed. You cannot do something because of money. You have to love what you're doing. And he also wouldn't tell you, he didn't study English. He studied Arabic, and he's fluent in a lot of languages.
That's right. That's right, exactly. So in my school in Omar bin Khattab, we studied a little bit about English and French, but mostly Arabic. Yeah, but I have my backyard study I do, so thank God now I can stand in. I can stand even at Washington, D.C., at Congress, and I give a speech that was excellent. So thank you. Again, I would like to thank Uncle Mustafa. And if you can remember, we are also part of 10 Tough group organized by GCCI. He always motivates youth, and definitely we have to thank him. From my house to my farm, when I always pass about Tough, I always used to be happy, feel like I'm in Gambia. This is kind of a structure, an environment I want to see. When you have a guest, you take them to Banjul, they will ask you, this is your capital. They have they will ask 3 times before you give them answer. So, but I always bring them here, around here. So, yeah. So, but thank you, Mr. Tuff, again. This is what we want, this is kind of environment we want to live. This is kind of development, roads, structures, infrastructure development. This is what we want to see. We are proud of him and other my elders, youth, and successful businessman here in the podium. And thanks again to remind youth they have to venture into agriculture, not only poultry, agriculture in general. America became America first because of agriculture. You have to create the environment for your people who are going to eat quality feed, and feed have to available. You cannot walk, you cannot teach, you cannot cure, you cannot do anything without food. Food is very important. Let the youth venture into agriculture, and government also change their policies to support local industries. Like always Njie said, I think he doesn't know me, but I call you several times because the way you talk is kind of national, local and national industry need to be protected, especially agriculture. You know, our operational costs are high. My operational costs in my farm compared to European operational costs in Europe or somewhere else, it's not different. So we cannot do this thing alone. Government have to help. You have to help your local industries. Yeah. Protect them, you know, give them opportunity. Like example, there's a time the onion of our local women's farmers, onions are ready, and then the government open a door for imported one to come. You are killing your local industry, and you cannot be independent, you cannot be superpower, you cannot be anything in this world without your local industry. They have to be protected. You know, I'm not going to take much of the time. Example, we depend on tourism and agriculture. Right now, there is tourism in the country, but still now the foreign currency is high. I'm buying my chicken, for example, from Holland, but I was thinking probably in tourism, the euro will go high, but still now it's high. Why? You have tourists in hotel. Almost 30 to 60% of what they use is almost imported. So we kind of have to think also to help local factory, local industry, so that what we eat will most, let's say 30 or 80% will come from locally. I understand we have to import some of things, but if you protect this industry, if you are receiving from tourism, example, $1 million, but if you are exporting outside almost $3 million, still now your economy is going to weak. So government have to take this area and take it seriously to protect industry. Thank you.
I'm sure the message will get to them. Last, like I said, but not least, we come to Jaha with serious issues that face our young people, especially the young women, which concerns issues of early marriage, female genital mutilation, and girls, even though there's free education, we see the figures in URR. In Banjul and KMC, there are more young ladies in high school than boys. But when you go to URR, CRR, the figures are low for the girls still, even though everything is free for them. So she will share her story with us, with the challenges and how she became successful at it when us, the older generation, tried everything and couldn't.
So I was born in Gambisara. I lived in Gambisara until 1994. I remember the year Jagne took over. It was my dad and my grandmother that moved to Gambisara. And I was the first girl in my family, not the first girl, but the first child in my family to ever get enrolled in school. My mother's from Sierra Leone. And when we moved from Gambisara, because my dad is in the diamond trade, and he went to Sierra Leone as well as Angola, like most Sarahules in this country. And the reason why I remember she enrolled me in school is because for her, she felt like she wanted a better life for me. At the age of 14, my mother passed away. 3 months after my mother passed away, I was sent to America to get married to a man that I've never met. I was 15 years old. And after 2 months of being in that relationship, I ran away. When I ran away, I lived with my aunt and uncle. I remember before I went to the US, I was a student at Ndaus Comprehensive. A lot of people that went to Ndaus would remember me in middle school. I hated school. I hated education. If there was a hunting at the school, I was in charge of organizing it. If there was an every day, I was the leader at it. If there was any trouble making at Ndaus, you would always find me in it. And I remember when we start grade 9, I failed my grade 9 exam. And I remember Pa Juf and Auntie Vicky specifically said that I would not come back to Ndaus for grade 10. And this was around the time my mother passed away. But I knew that my family was about to ship me to America, so I didn't care. A lot of us got expelled out of those. All of my friends ended up in SOS. I personally was just there, pretty much. But I remember when I went to America and being forced into a marriage, something in me came alive, because at that time I didn't have my mom to tell me that, Jaha, you have to go to school. This is why education was important. And when I ran away from my marriage, living with my aunt and uncle, they didn't want me to go to school. And I personally went around in a lot of schools in New York trying to get someone to enroll me. And because I was underage at the time, no school would allow me in because they needed a guardian with me, which I didn't have. And the final school that I remember going to at the Bronx, I sat there, and when they told me without a guardian we wouldn't enroll you, I just broke down and started crying. And they called the principal and shared like how bad I wanted an education. And they enrolled me finally without a guardian. I was able to graduate at the 11th grade because at that point, all I did was read. All I did was educate myself. And then I found a job in Harlem at an African restaurant called Africa Kine. I remember at the time when I lived in the Bronx, I would go to work, like I would go to school in the morning, get off at 3 p.m., go to work. I wouldn't get off until 1 a.m. And there were days when I slept in the train because I was just that tired. Rather than going home every night, I spent a lot of nights sleeping in the train with mad people, with homeless people. And these are things that I've never shared because I feel like a lot of Gambians don't know that about me. After getting a high school education at the age of 17, I called my dad because I was tired of the life that I was living in New York, and I told him, find me a husband. I don't care where you do. I don't care who. I'll get married, and I promise I will stay in that marriage. So at the age of 17, I ended up remarrying. I moved to Atlanta. When I moved to Atlanta, I enrolled myself in college again. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration. I started a job working for Wells Fargo as a bank teller. I started rising because the Sarahule in me loves money, and anyone that knows anything about banking in America, you know that the more sales that you make, the more money that you make. I started from a teller, I went to a service manager, to a banker, to an investment banker. And I made a lot of money doing that. But then I also know that with my story of what I went through female genital mutilation when I was 1 week old. Being forced to marry at the age of 15 once, and then again at the age of 17. I knew that I didn't want to see any other girl go through that. And I knew that the only way I can do something about this was to speak up about it. When I started Safe Hands for Girls, I didn't have much. I invested what I had into the organization. We went from an organization that I funded myself to where we are now. We're in 3 countries at the moment, and in 2018, we'll probably be in 7 countries. And we are about to launch one of the biggest campaigns on both FGM and child marriage. When I was called, I remember in 2016, I received a call from Time magazine, and they told me, we have a confidential message to share with you. And I remember I went online and Googled what Time magazine was, because at the time I didn't know what Time magazine was. And I saw that it was the biggest magazine in the world. And then I gave them my email address. They emailed me and told me that I was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. I remember I responded to the email and I was like, are you sure you're talking about Jaha Dukureh? I'm from Gambisara and I'm from the Gambia. And no one knows where the Gambia is. And I don't know what I did to be named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. No one really knows who I am. But I think at that time, people got it. What I always tell people is, ideas lead and money follows. When I started Safe Hands, I didn't start this organization because I thought I was going to make money. No one gave me a dime to do what I do. But right now, I get paid to attend events like this and speak. I get paid a lot of money to do what I do. It's because of my passion. What we do as advocates, advocacy doesn't cost anything. Using our voice doesn't cost anything. And each and every one of us in this room is passionate about something. There's something that's going on in our societies that we're not happy with. And it's our moral responsibility as a society to get up and say something about it. The only thing that I had back then is my voice. And to this day, what I have is still my voice. And I will continue to use that as long as I'm alive, whether there's money or not. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. So as young people, I mean, one of the greatest things that I find about Gambia is the amount of talent that we have in this country and selflessness that we have in this country. I've been very, very fortunate to work with some of the most amazing young people in this country, and Alhaji Manka is one of them. Manka is a prime example of someone that's keeping the history of our country. During the time of Jagne, he was there when he shouldn't have been there. And through our election, if there's anyone that collected pictures and documented what was happening in our history, is Alhaji Manka, and we need to give credit for that. Manka Ananga, Dauna. And he's there. Manka doesn't do what he does because of money. He does it because he genuinely cares. He worked with us when we didn't have anything, and to this day, when we have activities and we call him, he tells us, just pay for my way to get there. You don't have to pay me. And you don't find a lot of that in our country. And I think as young people, we need to get together and support one another. That's the beauty about the relationship that I have with people like Manka. It's like we may not be in the same field, but we believe in what each other does. And I think if more of us can get together and do that for one another, our country will move ahead. We need to support our own. With the FGM campaign, I was tired of white people talking about how barbaric our parents are. I was tired of the West controlling the narrative when it comes to female genital mutilation and some of these issues that we were facing. For me, this is my story. This is my culture. This is my lived experience. And if anyone is going to talk about it, it's going to be me. If anyone is going to talk on behalf of my sisters, it's going to be me. If you're going to make policies about our life, I need to be at that table because I have that lived experience. And I can speak to it more than anyone else. So, in a nutshell, that's my story. That's who I am. And thank you so much to Uncle Taff. I moved back to the Gambia in June of this year. And Uncle Taff is my neighbor. He was wonderful enough to allow me to stay at one of his apartments. And I've been living there, so I'm a renter in one of his apartments. But I think I appreciate someone like Uncle Taff because every single day he inspires me to want to be better. He inspires me to see what I want to be. And for me to see someone like him, a Gambian, to look up to is something that means a lot to me. So thank you, Uncle Taff, for creating this opportunity as well.
Thank you very much. I know now all the young people here are going to start something today. I can tell everybody is inspired and cannot wait to leave this room to start a new life. We can now open the floor for questions, comments, and I will try to be fair and balanced about it. Young man.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hassan. I run a startup software engineering company called Asotech. I have a revelation to make. Papa, you're 21-year-old. When you were on TV and you were speaking, you inspired a young man called Lamin Barrow. He later on became a freelance software developer. So when I was in high school, I met Lamin Barrow and he introduced me to programming. I want to say thank you.
My name is Aisha Jallo. I am a Gambian but currently studying in Ghana under the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship. My question is to Jaha. When I saw you as the only lady on the floor, I was a bit, well, okay, what conference am I attending? Because these things keeps coming, and you mentioned that you've worked with a lot of influential young leaders of the Gambia, and I do follow you on Facebook and other social media platforms. What is the future of the females beyond ending female genital mutilation? What is the role of young people in leadership? You look at different institutions. We have our young girls running for vice presidents of student union. What is your take on it? What is our future in terms of our young people in leadership, especially taking up the highest positions of leadership? Because I am inspired when I see young people taking up this, because that's where I want to be. Thank you.
I was having a conversation with someone today about this, and I told them I can't wait for FGM to end. Because my life is not about ending FGM. I have other ambitions and things that I want to do eventually. I know that it's possible for us to end practices like FGM in our generation. One thing that I forgot to mention during my speech is starting in February, I'll be the first the UN Goodwill Ambassador on both FGM and child marriage. And like what she said, women, I mean, when I walked up on stage as well, I had the same reaction that I was the only female in this group. There are more successful young women in the Gambia than just Jaha Dukureh, and we need that gender bias in everything that we do, in our parliament, in our government offices. But as we clearly can see, we don't have that in the Gambia. Because a lot of times, for us as women, we keep getting reminded that our place is in the kitchen and our place will always be in the kitchen, which is not true. Women are powerful, women are strong, and we belong everywhere that men. I believe in equity. I believe in the word equity, which is we should all be treated fairly. We should all be treated rightly. I think to answer your question about the future of women, I see women at the highest positions in this country. Our current vice president, who's a role model to me, is a woman. Our former vice president is a woman. And I do see this country being ruled someday by a woman.
Actually, we are going to go back to the question, but I have to come in here. This is my passion. Women, you know, I always tell people, if we are going to give women top positions, my worry is always at the lower levels. For me, I think that is where the power is. In Gambia, when you get to the local level, decision making, no women. And I think this is where the hard work is. Because at the top level, they will put token people, but of course, people like me will never get in because they say we're trouble. So we ask too many questions and we demand transparency. So we're not in too many things because of that. But I like mentoring young people, like Muhammed, like loads and loads of them, especially from the poorest of the poor and from the rural areas. I just spent 2 months going up and down. I love it. And I think that's where Gambia is going to grow. We need to be there.
My name is Mustafa Angom. I just have a statement to make about some things that Mohammed Sanyang said about government supporting agriculture. And then I have a question for Draman. Mr. Sanyang, I think the way government should support agriculture is what they do in Europe. Notably, the one I know is in 1984, I went to Vienna on a senior customs officer's course for 3 months. And what I found that they were doing for the farmers there was they grew onions and potatoes. The way they protected them was during the time of harvest, whether if the harvest takes 2 or 3 months, they raise the tariff for imported onions and potatoes, so that when people know that the price will be high if they import them, they buy from the local stores. So I think that is a way that the government, I think Senegal even does that now, yes, with their onions and potatoes that they grow. For Draman, my question is, when your brother was kidnapped, because you've left that part of the story. I don't know, because we were all interested, because my son was working with your company. When I asked him, where is Draman? He said, Draman has left the country and he's now in Senegal. How did you manage to leave?
Backward.
Mr. Ngam, I think I'll just give you a hint, but I am writing a book about my experience. It's almost like a movie. Luckily for us, deep within the State House, we had people who were telling us what Jagne intended for me. So I had advanced information about what their intentions were. And so there are good people everywhere. And out of the blue, one day, somebody extremely close to Jagne called me and told me that we just have been given instructions to essentially, you know, get rid of you. And so I got a call from the NDEA, and they told me, you know, we are wanted at our office. And so I was actually quite stubborn, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go and see. But my wife told me that before you go, I told her, let's go, you deposit me there. I was all dressed, all prepared, mentally also. On the way there, she said, you know what, you don't have to hurry to go. So why don't you speak to my dad before you go? And her dad, a very wise man, Basiru Jaha, told me, okay, these guys have gotten your brother. If they get you, you lose the fight. But if you go outside, you can fight them from outside. So I was able to, with the help of a lot of people, very comfortably drove to Basse and crossed from the ferry. And there is no customs border there, so it was smooth riding all the way to Dakar.
I am Jagne Fati, a student from MDA. I would just want to say thank you to these youth, the intellectuals. Your words are really inspiring. And I think as youth here in the hall, this is the time that we should make a change. I always say that a youthful stage is the most difficult stage in one's life, because it is the stage where one is resourceful and electric in anything you do in life. So I think it is the stage where one chose to be failed in life or one chose to be succeed in life. And hearing these people talking about their stories, I think we are really inspired here as youths. And as we live here, we should make a change in our life. Thank you.
I think in this new dispensation, I've been talking about politics of action and politics of development. I think Dr. Carriol talked about it. You know, we must do more. The younger generation, the Facebook generation, we never had Facebook those days. But it must transform people's lives. And I think the theme, as I would add, was about creating those opportunities for job creation. And I think I'll borrow from what Doctor said yesterday, Karamo, his fears. I think my fear in this new Gambia is the issue of unemployment. And I think when I was thinking of what to talk about this morning, I said there's 3 types of unemployment in Gambia, and I think this is very important. You have people who are unemployed, which is the 40% Mr. Carriol talked about all over the world. Amun connection, they cannot get in. You know, you have those people, I call them endo employment. They have to get out of the house. And that is the majority of this country. You know, if you give a driver $2,000 and you ask him to drive your kids, you ask him to drive you, his life is in your hands. Your life is in his hands. I mean, how do you expect that person to concentrate on the driving? So those people have jobs, they can't stay at home, but do they really have quality jobs? And I think these are the things that we should be thinking of what to do about. I have a few answers to that. And the third, which is our biggest problem also, is those people that are permanently unemployed. They are the young guys going through the back way, but of course right now you have people even educated. And I'm of the opinion that the young people that we see when we go to work, we leave them when they're drinking attire. They're the same young people who will open our doors. I think somebody mentioned it. Take our TVs, we can't do anything about it because they're human beings. And I think that this is the challenge of entrepreneurs like us in this new Gambia, where probably in a dictatorship, we were all coy about entering into areas that could destroy what we had already built. Some of us tried. Some of us have had our failures. But as the word is out here, if you don't try and fail, you'll never succeed. So I'm of the opinion that in moving this discussion forward, it is no longer about lip service. I think I want to talk about the highest level, which is the Chamber of Commerce. That's what we have in this country, because there must be prerequisites. We can talk about access to capital, education, skills training. I mean, before Taff was chairman of NTA, I came after him. We did so many things, Uncle Aki, TVET, skills. But I think in this new Gambia, we must engage our politicians, and I love what Mr. Carriel, sorry, I keep quoting you. We don't have to ask for a seat on the table anymore. We have to be present. And I think the support that came from the IFC, they approached the private sector, and we continue to say that the private sector is the engine of growth in this country. I beg to differ. It might be the engine, but there's no oil in that engine. And I think Momar Mass Taal mentioned this yesterday, that some of us are shopkeepers and stuff like this. It's difficult to accept, but that's the truth. So in this new dispensation, we're saying that it is politics of action, politics of development. We met the National Assembly members, similar age, 30-something, 40-something. We met the trade committee a couple of weeks ago before the budget speech, or just roundabout. Fantastic exchange. I didn't want to use the word lobby, but they actually told us, you guys need to lobby us. This is the new way of doing things. Mr. Sanyang, this idea of indigenization, you will talk about it, people before you, people after me, until it is in the books, in the law, it's not going to happen. So these are the things that we're talking to our MPs, that we need an indigenization law. There's oil and gas in this country. I don't just want to own a tanker, I want to own an oil block. Yes. That is the attitude. So in concluding, we're saying that we engage our parliamentarians, we do private member bills. We've already submitted different industries like the insurance, want to have their own sort of body, autonomous. The Saul Fraser's here, I think he was represented. The real estate agents want some type of kosher system where what they're doing is properly managed. So I'm of the opinion that on the legislative side, that's that. On the executive side, which is very important, I served as the vice president of the chamber during the Jagne era. And at some point, it became a sort of, what's the right word to use? It was a privilege to even get an audience. And I'm like, no. If we are supposed to be the job creators, if we're supposed to be creating all these jobs, paying all these taxes, we need to have a seat on the table. Yes, some people get into politics, but I'm saying that by developing an economic council, again, these are the things that we're working with the chamber and the IFC, that you have an economic council that sits with the executive. All these things we're talking about in the corners, it's not going to make a difference if the people here, like what Dr. Karamo said yesterday. So I want to believe that it's time for action, and I'd like to add that some of us are already doing that. I mean, people are talking about foundations. We did 1, 2, 3 years ago. Sally's on my board. We do a lot of CSR in the hospitals and all that, but I think this year we're focusing on youth entrepreneurship, and I've got my first, he's not here today, I asked him to come, Musa. He's a young guy who I met during the Empretech business plan competition with Tiga. I've done a few things with Tiga, but with Musa, he's a fisherman. He's struggling I took him to Access Bank. He couldn't even get a loan for 100,000 because it was too small. I'm the chairman of Access Bank. Yeah. So we're saying that through the foundation for 2018, and you can quote me, hopefully we'll get Musa to take a picture in his brand new boat that he's going to use to get into the ocean to catch more fish. And I think this is what I'm talking about. It must be politics of action. Thank you.